Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'd like to talk about Krita. Krita is a professional painting program which is free and open source. I'm out at the website right now, and it is made by artists that want to see affordable art tools for everyone, as it says here on the website. And this is great for concept art, texture and matte printers, illustrations and comics, and probably more. So, this is something that I downloaded a little over a week ago, and I've been kind of playing around with it. Krita is a paint program that I originally downloaded years ago, and I remember really being impressed with it back then, but most of the stuff that I did involved photo manipulation and so forth, so I've always pretty much used GIMP. GIMP has always been my kind of standard standby. However, I downloaded Krita, was exploring it a little bit, and has really been impressed with it. One thing I like to do, I like to draw and paint and things like that anyway. So Krita was just kind of a cool excuse to kind of give me another creative outlet, I suppose. So I started playing around with it, and then I got thinking, you know, I should make a video about this. And then along comes D Reaper. Yeah, he said, I love GIMP. I used it lots before for my pieces, but now I use Krita for all my digital art. After my experiences, Krita handles tablets and brushes a lot better. And since I'm using KDE Plasma, it melds in with the desktop a lot better, so it only makes sense. GIMP, however, is good for certain effects that I use. Maybe you could bring it up sometime. Between GIMP and Krita, I find the two make for a powerful combination. P.S. So glad I never fell into that Photoshop trap. Perks of being a poor kid, I guess. Yeah, that's kind of philosophical and makes sense, actually. So anyways, when I got this comment from D Reaper, apparently he was reading my mind, because that was the thing that pushed me over the edge and said, well, that does it. I'm doing a video. So here I am. And right now I'm out at the website. And as you can see, Krita is made for all three major platforms, which is Windows, Linux, and that funny looking operating system that has a bite taken out of a poison apple. What is that? Apple. Yes, Macintosh. So anyways, I have already downloaded the latest version of Krita, so it's already on my computer, but all you gotta do is just click here, or if you want the beta version, you can go ahead and click there as well. And the beta, I downloaded that as well, the 5.0. And that's in an app image, and it looks like it might have some extra brushes in it and a few things. So I decided to go with the beta version because it kind of looks like cutting edge, and who doesn't like cutting edge? However, if you compare the two looks wise, they really still look the same. So if you want to go with a stable, that is just fine, and you won't be lost in this video. I'm going to load Krita. So now I'm out at my desktop here, and I shrunk myself down, got myself out of the way so you can see better. And so here you got the Krita 5 Beta 2 app image right from the website. So I'm going to go ahead and just open this right up. Okay, and here we are. We're in our open window here workspace. This is the way Krita looks like when you first open it up. And we even have an area here where you can drag an image into the window to open it up right from a folder. So that's pretty handy. Or you can just start with a new file. And so here I got new file. What comes up by default is a custom document. And I have it set right now at 1920 by 1080, which is a pretty nice screen size. And then here you can set up your model. And I just go with the defaults on that too, which is RGB. And the depth and profile, I just have everything there at their default. And then I have this set at landscape, because I kind of like the landscapes look better for drawing and stuff like that. So I'm going to kind of go with that. But as you can see, you got all these other things. You can create something from the clipboard, which is pretty cool. They got animation templates here if you're like into Japanese manga anime style animation. This will load in a template with all the different layers and everything suited just for Japanese animation. And of course they have all the different kinds of shapes and brushes and so forth that are tailored just for that too, which is really cool. Like the Pantones and so forth. And then here we got our comic templates. So again, if you're into making comics and things like that, and also manga, waffle iron grids, European. So this is really beautiful. I really like this. And then here we have our design templates and cinema styles, presentation, screen, even web design. Looks like they thought of everything. And then we even have our DSLR templates. How cool is that? And then our texture templates, where you can have a texturized piece to go with. Really cool. I'm just going to keep it simple and leave it here at custom. And content here, you can have a default name if you like. I guess we'll just kind of call this tutorial, I guess, for lack of a better name. And let's say 01. We're going to have it start out with 2 layers here by default. And we'll just leave it as a raster layer. That sounds good. I'm going to hit create. And now we have our canvas that just popped up here on the screen. I'm just going to roll my middle mouse wheel back a little bit so it just shrinks down a little. That way we can get the whole thing on the screen. So this is what you see when we first get in here. And over here on the right hand side we got all our brush presets here. And there are tons of them. We got brushes, markers, pencils, the whole works. And even different types of paint with the brushes as well, like watercolors and wet paint, thick paint, a couple of palette knives, blenders, shapes and patterns, and in these, forget how you pronounce that, Moyer patterns, I guess it would be pronounced. And these are the kind of stuff you would use in comics, especially like Japanese comics and so forth. And then scale patterns and all kinds of shapes and patterns and cool things here at the bottom. And also you have eraser and blenders, pastels. So pretty much I think every medium in here is covered. Ink, calligraphy, and all that. So really cool. And then of course here you can narrow down and filter. So if you just want to see paint related stuff, you can select that, and then you'll have everything kind of related to paint. And then we can just do something like this little splotchy thing. We can come up here and maybe do this and just kind of splot some paint around. And that looks kind of cool. And then we could also change the color here and put some more splotches in. And then just come along and just kind of do stuff like this. And I don't know, I guess if you're going to give it a cool background, or maybe that's something else. So anyways, over here we got our layer window here. You can see it's on paint layer 1. So this paint layer is what they call a raster layer. This is a layer that you would typically see like when you're painting in Photoshop or using GIMP and so forth. But they also have a vector layer capability in here, which I think is really cool. They have vector and raster in the same application. I think that's really cool. I like that. It's almost kind of like having a Inkscape and GIMP all in one setting. So if I wanted to do a vector layer, all I'd have to do is come over here to this plus button. If I click the plus button, it'll automatically add the same type of layer, which is a raster paint layer. However, if I hit the little arrow designator right next to it, we can select different types of layers. So I would just go over here and select a vector layer. And now I can have vector work and raster all in the same project. How cool is that? What's the difference between vector and raster? What? Yeah, so if you're not really familiar with working with paint programs and graphic stuff like that, vector and raster may not really make a lot of sense. Raster is kind of like your format that you would normally see like when you load in a JPG or a PNG file. And when you enlarge it, let's say you have a small raster-based image, when you enlarge the picture, it's going to start getting pixelized, and the bigger you make it, the more pixelized it gets. Now with a vector image, vector is rendered in a completely different way, where you can have a vector image that's really small on a web page, like say an SVG image, and that vector image could be really tiny, and it could be a drawing of something, And then if you zoom in on it, it's still just as sharp. No matter how big you make it, it's just as sharp as it was when it was tiny. So it doesn't pixelize. And so vector images really have a lot of appeal, especially for web designers. So if I was going to create something vector based, I can just click the vector layer here, and this would go on the vector layer. Now if I was in my paint layer and I wanted to make, let's say, a circle, and this is the vector tool here, so this ellipse is a vector. If I came over here, it's not gonna work. It's gonna just make a paint splotch, and it's gonna put it right here on the paint layer. But that's kind of cool just the same. However, if I want it to be a vector image, then I would come up here to the vector layer and then select the circle. And now we got something solid. That's because this is a vector object. And let me change my cursor here. So now I can just kind of move this around. And you'll notice if I click over here on this paint layer, I can't really move this around. It'll just continue painting it because that's not a movable object. Whereas the vector is an object that I can move around. And I can also resize it like this, or shape it out, make it oval, and so forth. And if I come over here to tool options, here we have our different options like for our sizing and so forth. And then here, our color of the border. And then this is the fill color. So right now our border or outline is really super thick, like 200 pixels. So let's make that thinner. How about 5? So now you can see that that's a lot thinner. And yeah, that's not really there. That didn't refresh. And that's probably because of we'll just move that around. That'll kind of refresh the screen a little bit. And that's probably because I have my OBS studio and everything running. So it's probably gobbling up a lot of resources. So here we can change our outline color, and we could make that black actually. And then our fill color is right here under this little paint bucket. So right now it's turned off by default, but I can turn that on just by clicking the color here. And by default it's white. So I can come over here and make it some other color, like say, oh, maybe a blue color. And now it fills right in. Of course, if you don't want an outline, we can just hit this little X and that'll get rid of the outline as well. So those are different options. And like I said, with your outline, you can adjust the thickness right here. Oh, really cool. You can also make it a gradient type outline where it's darker here and lighter up here. So it kind of looks like a coin, I guess. And then if we went over here to the fill, you can do the same thing. We can set a gradient here and it'll make a default gradient. And then if you wanted to change the coloring, you can even do that right from in here. And of course, you can adjust the gradient just by sliding these guys. If you want to have finer control over the colors, we can do this. We can come down here and there's all kinds of types of gradients that you can select, even multiple gradients, like something like that. You can make it look really cool if you want. And again, we can adjust spread out our gradient is. So this kind of looks like it almost looks like kind of like a silicon wafer that's in a manufacturing plant. It's kind of cool. And then of course the type, you can have linear or radial, and that'll make it look even more like a silicon wafer. Wow. So yeah, and then over here at the end, we got a mesh gradient. So we even have a lot of choices here with our gradients. And then of course you can always go back to a solid color if you change your mind. So the other cool thing is we can also draw. So we could take this Bezier curve here. So I could just kind of draw something like this, like a shape, or I could trace something. Whoa. Somehow I painted that. Oh, I'm in the paint layer. Okay. Yes. So you want to keep in mind, if you're in the paint layer, anything you can do on the vector level, you can do on the paint level too, but instead it's going to be painted, which is kind of cool actually. Let me just jump up here. I'm going to undo that, go back up here, make sure I'm in the vector layer, and then take the Bezier tool. If you're tracing something, or if you're just doing it freehand, you can sit there and draw something. And again, that's really thick. So I'm going to make that 5 pixels again. And then I'm going to refresh the screen here. There we go. And so let's make that like a dark outline again. Now I got this vector shape that I drew using my Bezier curve. And so now I can come up here and go to the Edit Shapes tool, and I can actually pull these out and just kind of shape them the way I want. So if I want to make this into a specific type of shape, that's all I got to do. And then, of course, you can also bend it using these little handles that are coming out. Or if you don't want it bent at all, just push those right into the square, just like you were using Inkscape, if you're familiar with Inkscape. And now if I wanted that more rounded, all I'd have to do is select this point, hit my delete key, and then it's out of there. And then I can just kind of round it up like that. Kind of looks like a mouth almost, smiling. So anyways, now I could fill that in with a color if I wanted to. I could take my shape tool here, selector, and I can also size this. So if you grab the outside handle here in the corner, it'll size it. If you hold your control key down, then it'll keep the proportions when you size it. And same when you're going up and down, hold the control key and it'll keep it in proportion vertically. And without holding the control key, then it'll move up just the top part and stretch it like that. And same with the bottom. And same with the sides. It'll stretch outwards, or if you want to keep it in proportion, you can horizontally stretch it by holding the control key, and it'll keep it more in proportion horizontally. And then up here, of course, you can shrink it and make it bigger and do all that. But if you want to keep it in proportion, again, just hold your control key down, and that'll keep it perfectly in proportion as you shrink it and make it bigger. That way you won't accidentally knock it out of proportion. So that's important to know. And then if you go just outside these handles, you can see that the shape of your cursor changes, and you can rotate this guy. So that's how you would rotate. And then, so let's say you wanted it that way. So it looks more like a candle flame. And then, being outside the handle on the edges here, we got a skew, so we can skew it. And same with the sides. You can skew the sides that way. And we can also turn off our border. Looks like it's disappeared, but it's not. So if I go over here and hit my solid color, you can see we have a color. And then if we go into our gradient, we got our gradient choices again. And let's say I went with that, with a radial, and it kind of looks kind of cool. And then I could make that into an instant candle if I wanted to. And I'm just going to shrink my brush down here so it looks a little more. Oh yeah, I could make that into a candle if I wanted to, and and then go to tool options and fill it, and then select it, and then do what I did before, give it a color, and we could make that a blue candle, and we could get rid of the outline. Just kind of push that up. So yeah, that's a quick and dirty tutorial of the vector part of it. And then of course you got our filters up here. The filters don't apply to vector art, so if you go up here it's going to be grayed out. So the filters really apply to the raster layer. And this is probably why D Reaper was saying that he loads some of his stuff into GIMP for filtering, because GIMP has a lot more filters available. However, we do have some basic filters that are available here that are pretty good. So if I come into my paint layer, I can just take that out and that out and that out. And then I'm going to come over here, select my paint layer, highlight this guy, this little ring guy. And if I come up here to filter, I can apply a filter to this. I can do a color adjustment of the curves here. And it has a live preview. So as you can see, it's changing here. It's becoming more dark over here. And then I could add another curve here and maybe bring this out. And so you can adjust your color curves. The filtering in this program is really great too. And it just has that professional feel to it. It's just really fantastic. And then if I want to take something out, I can just take my rectangle select tool, just scroll around it, and then hit delete, and that whole section is out of there. And I can even do that with this stuff down here and take it out, just like that. So that's vector and painting. And the brushes are really fantastic. I mean, you can come in here and set a wet bristle brush, and then here's your brush size. So you would simply change your size right up here with these sliders, which makes it really easy. I'm really loving that. And of course, you got to select your brush tool too. And then it kind of gives you an outline of your shape. So then you can come over here and just kind of, and it helps to have your color selector selected over here so you can see what you're doing. So like if I had a blue in here, something like that, I could come down here with my brush and just kind of, and this is a wet brush here. And as you can see, it really does look wet. And to me, that looks like something that would work good for a water scene. So I would probably just kind of do that with the wet brush. And yeah, actually those strokes are a little wild. So if I was going to mellow that out a little bit, if I wanted to keep that, I mean, then I guess I could probably just smoothen that out a little bit, maybe with a blender, and come over here, and then I would just kind of make the size really big and come down here and just kind of smoothen that. Yeah, I accidentally tilted that. Whoops. This little tool down here in your bottom corner here is kind of where you can straighten that out. And I could just actually make that, I'm not sure what that is, 0, I guess. So if you set that and 0 it out, then it'll go back to where it was. And then, yeah, I can sit here and just kind of smoothen that out a bit. Make it look more like real water. And then maybe take my rake palette knife here and just kind of rake across it. And I would probably do that after I had a reflection in there. Like if I had a landscape and maybe we just kind of drew something in here, like maybe have this eroded dry bristles. Whoops. And just put something out here like that. Some kind of hills, maybe. And then kind of mix the color up a little. Maybe get a little more natural though. Something like that. And maybe take this brush and just kind of stick some bushes and stuff up in here. Or just kind of shade it. And this is probably not the brush I would actually be using here, but if we brought out maybe made it more like a pond, had it something like that. And had some trees and bushes and stuff right up in the front. And then maybe take my palette knife or a knife edge here and just kind of glide it along the edge of the pond here. And that part's already a pretty good effect. And then maybe just kind of run it down here. That kind of gives it a little bit more of an edge. Pun totally intended. And then, yeah, I guess I should have done the sky too, before the land. However, when you do stuff like that, all I gotta do is just make another layer here. And then I'll just move that underneath the paint layer 1. And then I can just come up here and grab a nice sky color. And then maybe right click. And when you right click, you got a whole another selection of stuff you can choose from. And also, if you come over here and click on this icon here, you can also select from here, or even select your favorites. Your favorites, I believe, are kind of auto-saved as you're using your brushes. So the different brushes and so forth that you use the most are going to end up in that My Favorites there. I think for the sky, I'll just kind of use the airbrush. Give it kind of a mixed medium, I guess. I'm just going to kind of lightly go on this here and just kind of give it kind of a natural sky look. Leave it light in some areas. Kind of like that. Yeah, that should work. And then jump back to something like this with the dry bristles. And maybe throw some more color in there. And then get on our proper layer. And then, yeah, just kind of have some more bushes or something in there that's got a little more style to it. And mix a little yellow in with it. And same up in here. So we can just kind of pop that in there and just kind of give it a quick and then darken that a little and mix a few more things in there. Kind of put that up in the background. Give it a little more definition. And kind of a look like you got trees out there. And then you just kind of mix some other colors in there. Kind of bring it out a little. And having a few colors in there just kind of makes a difference. And then same with up front. So anyways, yeah, I'm getting a little too busy in here. Actually, I would probably want to use more of an oil paint type effect in here, actually, if I was going to be semi-serious. However, you kind of get the picture. And then in the water, you can simply come down and maybe use a wet blend or a blender type thing here and just kind of blend it in. And then come over here and you would just grab another brush, maybe the same, something like this, and kind of go back into like a dark greenish and just come in the water here and just kind of mix that in with the water like that, and make the size a little bigger, kind of get the same effect here. And then we blend it all in like this. Take a rake, make it really big. kind of get some gentle raking in there. Yeah, a little too much rake. Then just kind of a gentle blend there. So yeah, you kind of get the picture, and then so that's how quick you can just kind of throw together some kind of thing. So that's a quick demo of the different brushes that are available. So that's always fun. And of course you can save it wherever you want. You can actually make a folder and just call it Krita if you want. Put your Krita things in there. And this will save a project file, which is a KRA. I'll just call it test. And then if you want to start something new, all we got to do is just close all. And then you can start a new project. So that's how that works. But wait, there's more. Yes, you can also animate in Krita. Really? Yes, you can. How cool is that? Let me show you real quick. This is really fun. So if we started a new file, and we just went with the same settings here, 1920 by 1080, and we'll just go ahead and create another canvas. And then I'm just gonna roll out with my middle mouse button. And then to animate, all we gotta do is come up here to our window, select Workspace, and then Animation. And when you do that, we get this whole animation work area here with the timeline and everything. So this is really cool. And this could actually be a video in itself. So I won't do anything too fancy. But however, if I roll this out, here we have our animation sheet and then our timeline. And so we got a paint layer and a background here right off the bat that's automatically generated. So over here we have our animation properties here. So if we click this little burger menu, then we can see that our clip starts at 0 frames and ends at 100 frames. So there's 100 frames in the default animation. And then our frame rate is 24 by default, 24. So every 24 frames is going to be 1 second of animation. So at 100, you have approximately 4 seconds of animation right here with these settings. And of course you can make it longer or shorter right there. And then this is your onion skin settings. And so when you click that, it turns off the menu. The menu's on here by default. And then of course over here is your timeline where you can play, stop, and so forth. So that's where you would animate your thing. So let's try something. Let's come up here and select a brush. Oh, maybe this one. I come over here and make it a little smaller. And let's just kind of make a little ball up here. Okay, so that would be our first frame. And then we want to hit create blank frame. And once I do that, when I draw the little ball, we got our ball. And now when I move this over, and actually we got to delete that because I think I created that by mistake. There we go. So now when we move it over, you can see that the ball stays there. And it'll stay there until we create another blank frame. So if I want that to just kind of sit there for a second, I can just slide this up a little ways and then create blank frame. And as you'll see, it'll disappear because we're in a new frame. But where was the old ball? If you want to reference, we want to go down here in the right corner on our paint layer and select onion skins. And now you can see that the previous ball is red. The opacity is lower. And then, of course, the frame ahead would be greenish, have a green tint to it. So now we know where our ball is, so we got a reference. So I can go ahead and draw another one right here. And then I can move up, say, a few frames. Do the same thing, press. You got to remember to click a new blank frame every time. So now that we did that, I can make the ball maybe down here. and then move up another 5, click blank, put it here, another 5, click blank, and then maybe now we'll have it bounce. So I'll have it near the bottom here, and I'll kind of flatten it out a bit. Then we'll come over here, hit blank, and then just kind of stretch it out a little bit like it's moving up. And blank. And now I'll make it kind of go a little bit faster. So even though I'm still moving the same amount of frames, I'm kind of putting it farther apart. And we just kind of keep doing the same thing until it gets all the way down. And finally, your last frame would just be nothing. So we just create a blank frame there, and then that way there'll be nothing there. So now if we go back to the beginning and click on frame 0 and we turn off our onion skin, we see our ball, and if we hit the play button, it'll bounce. Woo! So yes, easy peasy. So it's really easy to animate. And so if I was going to continue, it would just really be the same process. It's really simple to animate in here. So I could actually create another layer here, and this paint layer here, I could double click on it and put guy on it. And then I can simply change my brush size here, make it smaller, and then maybe use another color like, oh, just black for an outline to ink something. And then I would just come over here to where the ball bounced, which it hits the ground right there. So what I can do is when my ball is here in the bounce area, I can put my guy up here. I'll just hit a blank frame right here, create it, and then I'll do my guy. And so this is where he just gets hit. All right, so now we kind of know the point of impact. So then over here, back at the beginning, I'm going to turn on my onion skin, and we can see him right there. So now we know where to put him. So now all I have to do is come over here and just draw him again, like that. Except this time he's a little more casual because he's just kind of chilling and looking pretty happy. But now if we were to play this real quick, it would kind of go like this. Boing. So then to continue on, of course, we go up to the next frame where the ball is kind of moving. And so in this frame, another blank. We're going to have him go tripping here, flying like, whoa. And then the next one. And then maybe add in a background layer and move that down. Airbrush. Face paint. Move it down. There, now we have a quick and dirty animation. So if I bring it all the way back, then if we play this, turn off the onion skin, it should kind of look like an animation. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. Forgot to create a blank before the skid. And right here. So now if we play it, yeah, so there we go. A simple animation. And then if we wanted to save it, all we have to do is come up here to File, Render Animation. And then here, you want to make sure you have FFmpeg installed. And then you can save it in any format like a GIF or an MKV, animated PNG, a WebP, MP4, WebM. So all these different things to choose from, which is really great. I think for simplicity, I'll just kind of keep it as a GIF. And let's just choose a folder here. So in my picture folder, I'll just put it in the Krita. And then just call it Guidefall, I guess. And then save it. And then we got our 100 frames of animation for about a 4-second file. So that's Krita in a nutshell. Really, even after all this, I've barely touched the tip of the iceberg. And so I just kind of wanted to give you a quick overview of some of the things that Krita is capable of. And so this is just a fantastic program. And if you've never actually used it before and you like to create, this is really something you got to jump into and use, because it'll give you resources that you never thought had available. In fact, if you like doing this kind of stuff and you're using Photoshop, you'll probably never go back to Photoshop. So there you have it. And in case you want to try a little animating yourself, I'll go ahead and just leave a link to this project file and GIF file in the description below. And that way you'll have a reference that you can kind of refer back to, and it might help you a little bit when it comes to using Krita if you've never used it before, have no familiarity. And with that, I hope this video was helpful, semi-interesting, and everything else like that there. And if it was, don't forget to leave that thumbs up and hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.